Greetings, humans.
Welcome to another episode of Humans of the Multiverse, where we share the stories of our friends from all over the globe.
We hope you find this conversation interesting and uplifting. Our goal is to bring people together, so if you enjoy the interview, we'd love to hear your comments.
Don't forget to like and subscribe, and thanks for watching. This week we are joined by Susan Rodiachuk. Susan was born with a congenital heart condition and is a cancer survivor.
In spite of these challenges, she pours her life's energy into teaching children and adults how to regulate their emotions through mindfulness, meditation, and yoga. We hope you enjoy this episode of Humans of the Multiverse.
Yeah, thanks for coming on the show. It's great to meet you, Susan. This is the Humans of the Multiverse series where me and Dave just interview people, talk to people that we know, friends of friends, let them tell their life story. And it sounds like you do a really good job of building people up and cheering people up in what you do. So we wanted to hear more about that tonight.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. And why don't you kind of take it from the top, if you don't mind, even before yoga? Who are you? Where are you from? How'd you grow up, kind of thing?
My name is Sue, and I grew up here on Long Island. I always knew I wanted to be a teacher since I was a little girl. My friends would be my little classmates. I would always ask the teacher for extra sheets and so forth. And so that's how it went for me. I knew right away that my calling was teaching. And so, since I was a little girl, I knew that was my thing. But I did have, growing up, I had a congenital heart disorder. So pretty interesting, since I was born in 1971, that the doctors detected it at birth. Right. And I bring that up in terms of my my youth because it kind of shaped who I was as a person. Never took a gym class, ever. Because in that time, I had aortic valve stenosis. And so I had my first open heart surgery when I was 9 years old.
Wow.
And so the doctors were very conservative then and extra cautious, shall I say. Mm-hmm. So kind of grew up in a bubble because my parents just were so scared. And my next surgery was when I was 18. They waited till I was fully grown and I had a prosthetic heart valve. So that really shaped who I was because I ended up not really being able to play sports since I had my heart issue, and I focused in on school. So that was my MO. Everything was all about school, and since I loved learning, it just went along with it. I was like an A+ student, graduated from high school with a 4.0, graduated magna cum laude, and went to Hofstra University, which is a local school. Selected my school based on the proximity to my cardiologist.
Wow.
Because I had a prosthetic valve, I was on an anticoagulant, which offered some challenges as a young adult, shall I say. And then I took my first yoga class when I was, I think, probably like 19, maybe sophomore year. So it wasn't until I went to college that I really started to explore my physical boundaries and limits, because I had this new valve. And so I was then feeling like healthy for the first time in my life.
And you got the go ahead from your doctors to start doing that?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, I did. It was yoga. So yoga never usually isn't something. It's not like I still can't do things like a sumo wrestler. I can't be a sumo wrestler. I did ski as a kid, and I can't ski because I'm on a blood thinner. So there are some limitations. When my 70-year-old grandmother, I think she was 70 or 75, went on Coumadin, she thought it was a change in her lifestyle. I had to teach her that it's okay, that you can survive. But anyway, I took my first yoga class when I was 18 or 19, the sophomore year, and I loved it. I just felt like at peace for the first time in my life, and it was invigorating to be able to have that sense of mind and body. And just to feel like your own space and your own place and time. Also at college, I met my husband, and it was a little bit of a unique situation because when we met, it was in French class, and I say it's unique because he also needed open heart surgery. Oh, so wow. It was just like meant to be. He and I just hit it off right away. He couldn't believe it when I was telling him I already had open heart surgery. On our first date, my mother couldn't believe I was bringing home another child with needing open heart surgery. So anyway, so that's how I really just got into yoga, got into being myself. And it was through my husband who somewhat pushed me. My parents kept me in a bubble when I was growing up. And my husband, he's always been the opposite. He's always been, you're no different than anyone else, and the sky's the limit. And so I've pushed the boundaries a bit here and there. And
I wanted to ask what it was like, growing up in a bubble like that, the challenges you faced, or like socially or anything like that.
Yeah, it was a bit awkward at times. I'd have to get picked up early from school to go to a cardiologist. And when I say I grew up in a bubble, what I mean by that is just my parents were very protective. And as I said, the doctors didn't really want me to participate in sports. My family is sporty. My brother and sister are both sporty people. And so I was the academic one. And it was okay for me because I was always, like I said, I did enjoy school. So I just felt like that was my avenue, and that everyone has their own strengths. When I went to high school, one of the things, I went to Catholic school for 12 years. And one of the things in the academy that I went to, their premise is that everyone has a gift to offer. And so my exploration and my mantra in life is that we encounter people and we have these experiences because it's meant to be. And each of us have a gift to offer. And it's a matter of what is your gift. And that goes with the yoga part, because as I explored yoga and truly became a yoga teacher, I realized that it was my mission was to not only teach, but to help people be able to overcome obstacles. And yoga has been able to do that for me.
Was there a teacher growing up? You really liked school. Was there a teacher that really had an influence on you?
There were multiple teachers, but Sister Barbara would be in elementary school, because she just convinced me that reading was she just gave me all the books that I could ever have.
Very cool.
Sister Karen Donahue, she was a teacher who I was in plays as a kid. I was always theatrical, and she encouraged me that way as well. And there's still a nun that I keep in touch with, Sister Marianne, and to this day, and I graduated many years ago, 1989, and we still keep in touch. So yeah, there were multiple teachers that I did have in my life that shaped me.
Shout out to Sister Barbara, Sister Donna, and Sister
Barbara, Sister Karen, and then Donahue, and then who else did I say?
Oh, Mary Catherine.
Sister Marianne, you got
Mary
it.
Ann,
Sister Mary Catherine, yeah. She wasn't a teacher. She was responsible for creating, I don't know her exact title, but she's like a minister. She helped arrange all the masses, because we'd go to mass once a week or however often it was. Okay.
That's great to hear that you maintain those connections even after these years.
Yeah, to this day. In fact, I student taught nearby at Hofstra, and I still have the connection with my cooperating teacher, my initial principals. Yes.
Very cool. And when you in high school, did you even know what yoga was?
Oh, no idea. No.
And how foreign or exotic did you seem when you were first told about it in college?
It was out there for me, but I mean, I really, like I told you, I didn't have many. Like, I didn't even know the rules of sports because I never learned them. So it wasn't really exotic. It was just like, let's try this out. I also took a sailing class for fun. So
like in college?
In college.
Oh, neat.
Yeah. Well, I usually took 17 or 18 credits. I had two majors, elementary ed and psychology. And I always took the maximum amount of classes that I could, so that it would maximize, since we were spending money anyway on the tuition. So I took theater appreciation and would go into the city. I always did extra stuff like that.
Can you take us to that first yoga class and your thoughts going in versus your thoughts going out? And
the first yoga class I had wasn't one that I would want to experience today, in the sense that it was in the Hofstra gym where they wrestle.
Okay.
So it was a sensory overload. I was disgusted with the mats, that were filled with sweat and the smells. But yet, despite those challenges of the sensory overload, I just remember feeling connected. Despite that, it was it's kind of like the experience I had. I participate in the summer solstice, which is in New York Times. They shut down the city, and I've actually I helped teach a class there. And that's phenomenal. If you can practice yoga in Times Square and shut down everything from around you, it's an amazing experience. So not that the Hofstra gym was that stimulating, but there were it wasn't like being in a studio.
So you did have some aha moments though in that first class, like, well, this is different. This is.
It was just how my body felt stretching, and I did enjoy it. I continued on, so I took that one class again just to experience, and I also took a sailing class, and then because I enjoyed both of them, I took another 2 or 3 sailing classes, and I did once I graduated from college, I took continuing ed classes. But again, they were offered, continuing ed is with the district, and they're offered in the local elementary or high school gym. So it wasn't quite the same as a studio. So it really was once I started going into a studio that I felt the mind and the body connection, and then the soul came in as well.
Mm-hmm. So after college, did you proceed into teaching elementary school? You said primary education, or did you go the studio route?
I taught, I have been teaching since 1993. So I'm an elementary school teacher. I was certified to teach elementary ed and reading, got my master's, and I have been teaching ever since And then in addition to that, like I now teach yoga, and I have been doing that for over 10 years or so.
That's amazing. You're making a positive impact on both fronts, I think.
Yes, so just to fill you in a little bit more, not only did I have the 2 open heart surgeries, and I enjoyed yoga, but yoga was something that helped me, I found, deal with the stressors of life. And so it was an outlet, and I loved that mind and body connection. So I ended up adopting 2 daughters because of my heart condition. It was, and also because of my taking of the anticoagulant, and it's teratogenic, that it was better for me to adopt. It was wonderful. I have a beautiful family. However, with parenting and juggling school and teaching, I had yoga as my outlet. And so that was just always wonderful for me because I had that, and my husband supported me in that and always made time and understood that I needed that time. But then fast forward a bit, my children were older. My mom was back in 2000, maybe 12 or so. She was diagnosed with cancer, and she had about a 3-year battle with cancer. It was a challenge for me because she's my best friend, my soulmate, the person I called every single day of my entire life. And when that happened, I was really going through a dark time and struggling. And I was also diagnosed with cancer. So I had thyroid cancer. And so throughout my life, I've had multiple surgeries for different things. And I then, at that point, decided that I need to do something. And I needed to just focus, because what is my thing? My MO in life was to learn. So I combined my passion of yoga, and I thought I need to learn more about this. So I enrolled myself in a 200-hour locally in Wisconsin with Always at Home, and I took a 200-hour class. And then after taking that, which my mother was able to come to like my graduation from that, it was wonderful, and I was really excited. And then following that, following that, in my elementary, not in my elementary school, in my district, we have something called social emotional learning. And they were piloting a program. There was a cohort, and I was the first cohort. And I had training in how to teach social emotional learning. And it was just like this aha moment. And it was going, like I said, it was a dark time in my life because my mother was dying and I had cancer, but yet I was overcoming it once again by learning how to teach yoga. And then simultaneously, that was in my own time, but then simultaneously at school, I was becoming trained in social emotional learning. And the best part was it ended up being like a trifecta, because I was able to combine my passion with my elementary education, my master's degree, with my yoga teacher training. I then took 100 hours of teaching yoga to children. After I had cancer, I had, and when my mom passed, it was very hard for me. And I wasn't able, there was a time when I had to wait because of after my surgery where I couldn't use my body like I would normally. So I didn't have that outlet that I had learned. And I took up mindfulness. So with a Long Island, I think I was with Corey Mascara, his name is, and it's Long Island Mindfulness. It was I think an 8-week mindfulness-based stress reduction class. So that was the next thing that I did. So I've always found that with my life, I've learned that with the struggles that occur, that I can think outside the box to try to solve those problems. And my goal is to try to help people. And I teach yin yoga, yin yoga is about stretching. It's not a cardiovascular yoga. It's more about being in touch with your body, stretching what's called the fascia. And the best way I like to think of it, yin yoga, is learning how to develop patience, because you're holding the poses for a while and they're sometimes uncomfortable poses. And so my theory is that you take, if you can learn to take what you learn in yoga, to take it off the mat and apply it, that's a wonderful thing. So I also teach children's yoga. I teach that in my classroom, not my classroom, in my school. And I started doing that years ago. I teach 2 different times a day, 2 different times a week, I mean. And I teach at a studio, and then I teach the adult yoga. So I teach about 4 to 5 classes a week.
With the yin yoga, it sounds like, at least from my little experience, if you can find peace in those moments of extreme discomfort when you're holding a pose or a balance that's very challenging, then it's way easier to find peace when you're sitting in a car or sitting at your desk somewhere comfortable later on.
That's exactly what I said when we were holding what's called a toe squat this past week. I was teaching on Tuesday night. We're holding the squat, and I was talking to the students, and I was telling them that was one of my takes on it, was that when you're waiting in a line and you're frustrated, or even for that matter, frustrated with a person, sometimes, you just got to take a breath and breathe through it and use your breath as an anchor, which is also what I teach my students. So in my class, I teach my students how to, as a classroom teacher, not even in my role as a yoga teacher, but in my class, I teach my students how to use their breath to help them navigate their body and their emotions. And in addition, I told you I learned social emotional learning. So I became the instructional specialist for our school. And last year I was trained, in the past few years, I was trained at Yale in something called a mood meter. And that was a phenomenal experience because, for example, my students come in every day, and right off the bat, when we do attendance, they do attendance by putting the little popsicle sticks in. There's 4 moods, and it's basically red, yellow, and blue, and green, and they're all different emotions. And so it helps me right away to see which kid is in the blue zone, which kid is feeling sad, and I can, if we as educators, we all know this as educators, that we need to tap into those students' emotions, that learning is all about the relationships. And that's your question, right? Didn't you ask me just before, who do you remember? And we're talking about 1980s, and I remember these teachers' names. It's the relationship that you create with students. And so my role, or what I think deem is important, is as soon as my students arrive every day, is to try to diagnose where they are. In yoga, we call it reading the room. So as a yoga teacher, I might have a plan of what to do, especially when I teach kids yoga. And that, when the children get there and I see the energy, or when the adults get there, and I change it accordingly. And so I do have a plan, but then I change it according to what the needs are. And so I do that as well as a classroom.
Early on in your teaching and implementing this, did you ever have times where you were going into, you had a plan and you were trying to force it and it just wasn't working and you were like, okay, I got to figure this out. I got to do this differently?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, I am a student. I'm lucky in the sense that learning comes easy for me. And so I'm also very like a type A kind of person, which is funny that I like yin yoga. I think I would be more like an Orange Theory girl if I grew up in a different way. And like my brother is a CrossFit guy. So I push ahead. And so even to this day, teaching 31 years, I still have to take a breath and take a step and live my own words. Got
it. You obviously you're a lifelong learner, and I love how you took your passion for learning and kind of applied it to like getting healthy and recovering from heart surgery and cancer and things like that. Like, what role would you say yoga played in, like, besides just being, you called it I don't know if you use the word distraction or you were pouring yourself into it, but what role would you say that played in your recovery?
It was like a lifesaver. Yeah, it was definitely, like I had said, I started to explore it when I was a sophomore in college. And at that point, it was just exploring my own boundaries. And since then, I have learned to continue to explore my own boundaries, but then also to learn how to understand when I need to step back. And that's the beautiful thing about yoga, which is different than other sports. There are times when I can just go to it. I practice hot yoga and I can just really get the pose. And there's other times where I can't hit it. I can't do it. And it's okay. It's okay. And so it's taught me self-love. It's taught me patience. It's taught me acceptance. Yeah.
I think acceptance is probably a big part of it, as well as just managing your emotional energy, right?
For sure. Yeah.
When it comes to...
Also confidence. It gave me confidence because for the first time in my life, I felt physically fit and felt like I didn't tell you. So during COVID, I took different kinds of training in yoga as well. So I became certified in yin yoga. I became certified in restorative yoga. I became certified in chair yoga. I took a sup yoga. So I teach yoga on a stand-up paddleboard. And so it's been wonderful. And so whenever we travel, my husband and I are avid travelers, and wherever we travel to, I'm always taking yoga classes. And then also I feel like yoga, like I said, is mind, body, soul. So you'll find me wherever I am. People will laugh because if you look at like social media posts that I have, wherever I'm traveling to, I always get myself into a yoga pose, because it just, I feel such, I would call it the yellow zone, exhilarated. If you were referring to the mood meter, just exhilarated through yoga. And so when I'm traveling, I strike a pose and take a picture every time. And, I'm just happy to be here, happy to be alive. I'm lucky. I've had a lot of scares during my life, and I take each day. My mantra in my life is Carpe Diem. And I do that every day and try to encourage others that this too shall pass, and to breathe, just breathe and be in the moment.
You're an avid traveler. What were some of the highlights from the last year? Favorite places that you've been to? Tell us about that.
Oh, last year I went to Alaska. So we took a cruise, and I'm not usually a cruise kind of person because we like to explore, we like to navigate and go through our own waters. But yeah, I loved Alaska. We were planning on going to Hawaii, but it wasn't in our budget. And so we came up with a plan B and ended up in a totally different climate. But seeing those glaciers was phenomenal. Hiking through, it was just amazing. It was phenomenal. So I did that. That was one of my favorite spots. And then
Did you do yoga there in
I practiced yoga on the boat.
Okay.
Yeah, I practiced yoga on the boat, not outside. I
I
did
was just
go.
imagining you striking a pose on a
Oh,
on a glacier or something.
yes, I did. I have, of course. Yeah, I did that. I did like not a
Perfect.
full class, but I
Got
did
it.
poses. Anywhere I go, I do poses. My other two favorite spots would be Italy. I went to Italy with my family, and that was a fun story. But yeah, that was a phenomenal experience, and that was years ago. And then the other, which I absolutely loved, was Utah. We went to Bryce
Ooh,
Canyon
yeah.
and we hiked it, and woof. So my husband is complete opposite than me. As whereas I do yoga, he is a person who likes to um, pursue more and more challenges. So that, and when I say that, we were hiking in 110 degrees, but my husband takes double spin classes on the weekends. So his cardiovascular strength is a lot different than mine. But like I said, he always likes to push me a little bit more.
Hmm.
So there we were hiking up in 110-degree weather, and the views that we had when we got to the top were breathtaking. And
Hmm.
I'm so lucky that I did it. And every time I have a new experience like that, we love nature, both of us, and so when we have those experiences, it's just it's serene. It's almost it's almost like a religion. I know that sounds bizarre, but because I feel like so connected with nature, and then when I'm experiencing my physical body, that so I feel like yoga can be done off the mat too. Like yoga can be done. We went on one of these trails called the Narrows. This was in
I've been there.
Zion National Park.
Mhm.
And again, my husband, who likes to push the buttons, he kept saying, we're going on this trail. I said, oh no, we're not, because it had like warnings on it, and it had colors of like red, yellow, and green.
Mhm.
And so we went when it was yellow, and we took a few mile hike, which was on a very low, like, flat land. And we get to the end where we start to do the Narrows. And they said, I just want to warn you that if you do get stuck on this trail, a helicopter will have to come in and get you off. And there's water in it. And so you're walking on the rocks. And luckily I had the walking sticks, but you're walking on the rocks. And so it started off where it's at our ankles, but eventually it was like at my chest.
Yep.
And yeah, I struck a yoga pose there too. But it was just phenomenal. And it did feel good though, because it felt like it was 50-degree water. And it was, because it was 110 degrees outside. So
Yeah.
I've been to Utah. It's really a magical place. I've been to all 5 parks there, and it's really a magical place. Now, nature. So, nature for me has always been, a meditative experience and a spiritual experience for me too. I'm not a very spiritual guy unless I'm out in nature somewhere, and that's when it hits me. What do you think about like? How do you ever use nature in your yoga teaching? Do you ever teach yoga outside or encourage
oh,
people to do so?
absolutely. Like with my elementary students, we'll go outside. Unfortunately, with the studios, we can't. The studios that I teach at, because it's just liabilities, and it's on a busy road where the studio
Sure.
is. But in the elementary school, if it's a beautiful day, I'll go outside, and we'll go out in the courtyard, and it's phenomenal just to be able to do a tree pose and look at the trees.
And it
Um,
changes the energy, I'm betting, too, of the
Oh,
kids and stuff
it
like that.
absolutely does. Yes.
Mhm.
And one of my favorite things to do is beach yoga, where I practice, and I love practicing on the beach and listening to the ocean. And
Mhm.
like I said before, on a paddleboard. On a
Mhm.
paddleboard is phenomenal too.
Mhm.
I've done it both ways, where you're anchored, which I prefer because it's a little hard when your board's moving and you're trying to do yoga at the same time.
I can imagine.
Yeah, but that feeling in nature is just I don't know. I feel connected. I feel connected to everything: my body, my mind, my soul, and there is that spiritual element. Even I feel like for people who may not believe in a higher being, their higher being might be the mountains, or might be the ocean, or might be the sun, or whatever it is that is nature that inspires them.
I was interested earlier when you mentioned breath work. One of the first interviews we did was with an acquaintance of Dave's who does a breath work class. So that's something that we're super interested in. What are the types of things that you teach students about how to be mindful of their breathing?
Well, it starts at basic. First of all, our breath really tells us how we're feeling. And so that's what I start off with, having the students being aware of that. For example, I one time had a student come in, and she seemed like she was hyperventilating, and she was just so upset. And it was because her mom was going on a college interview with her or no, yeah, older daughter. And so she was going to be with dad, and she was afraid dad wouldn't be able to cook dinner. and so with this girl, the student of mine who was just thinking life was over because she wasn't going to have her dinner, I said, listen, let's talk about this. How are you feeling right now? She's like, I can't breathe. And she really sounded like, she's like, my heart rate is up and I don't know what's happening. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes. And so in that way, I taught her how to understand that your breath really does show you how you're feeling when it's elevated. So I teach my students that to recognize their emotions through their breath. And then there's that self-regulation component as well.
Right.
So that with students, as well as I guess with all people.
Oh yeah.
You can really. I've been to surgeries where I've walked into surgeries, and literally I've walked into my thyroid surgery. They usually wheel you in, and they had me walk in. Which was enabling. And when I remember 2 or 3 surgeries that I've had since yoga, I've had surgeries in other areas besides my heart and my thyroid. I remember one doctor asking me, or a nurse saying, would you like some medicine just to calm your mind before you enter surgery? I said, no, I'm good. I'm all right. Mm-hmm. And so I'm in OR and they're getting me all set up. And they said, they took my heart rate and they said, you are so calm right now. Mm-hmm. Like this never happens. Did you take something? Like
it was inside here. You know how to turn it on when you need to.
I said, no, I just did my breathing exercises. Yep. Yeah. So it's just learning how there's so many different breath patterns that you can do. Something as simple for students is like a box breathing, where you breathe in for 3 or whatever the amount is. Mm-hmm. Think about making a square, breathe in for 3, pause for 3, out for 3, pause for 3, and continue.
Mm-hmm. I'm working in mental health. I've taught a lot of breathing and mindfulness and that kind of thing. And one thing I've noticed is it's much harder to teach breathing and have people practice it regularly as to adults than it is to kids. Do you find that kids, what's the difference between kids and adults teaching yoga and breathing and stuff like that?
I would have thought yoga would be 10 times harder for kids.
The reason why I say is because you want to, I'm trying to instill like a habit, like a regular healthy routine. And it's much harder to do that and pick one up as an adult than it is for kids. That's why I wish I was taught these things when I was a kid. Mm-hmm. I think I would have had a much better experience in the military. And after that, had I had, understanding of my emotions through breath and understanding, how I can self-regulate that way. I had to learn it afterwards, after I already had PTSD and stuff like that, right? So I guess what I'm getting at is kids are more moldable, right? Is that the big difference, or?
They are, but also you have to remember that the people that I work with, like when I teach yoga to adults, they're choosing to be there and they're at studios. And so they're already in that space. And so I don't necessarily find one population to be easier or harder. When I teach it to so I have yoga club, but then I also teach it to my class. My class is, they're just there. They're there. Mm-hmm. They're not signing up for that. They got me as a teacher. So this is what they got. So, I do intrinsically, because of who I am, I try to have them embrace a sense of growth mindset and being able to work through their struggles and having strategies and understanding that sometimes you have to get on the struggle bus. And when you're on that bus, right, it doesn't feel comfortable. And that goes back to yin yoga. When we're on the mat and you're in that pose and you're not comfortable, well, what are you going to do? You're going to breathe through it. You're going to just relax your mind, calm your body, and get through it. And same thing when you're doing for a child, if you're doing a long division problem, that you have to work it through. But if you're asking which population is most challenging, I would say it would be the general population of children, as opposed to the ones who sign up for my yoga classes. The ones who sign up for my yoga classes have probably parents that have already instilled it with them. Mm-hmm. I do have a diverse population of students, and I've had many. I've had students with all kinds of disabilities, and I've had a blind student, adult blind student. that really was a challenge because my cueing had to be spot on. She couldn't see anything I was doing. Um, so, and it was amazing how in tune she was. I learned from her, watching her practice beside me. I've had adults who had mental illness. I've had adults and children who've had learning disabilities, many autistic students as well. And I've had, what's that? Sorry, what was that?
I was just going to point out, I've tried doing my balancing exercises with my eyes closed. It's instantly 10 to 100 times harder. You think you're getting good at it with your eyes open, try it with your eyes closed. It's a whole other level.
Yep. I teach that to adults and to kids, starting even in mountain pose. When you're in mountain pose, it feels like so mountain pose is simply standing with your feet together, and you're standing tall like a mountain. Your hands are by your side. It's easy. You're just standing. You're not even thinking about it because you're just standing. It's what you do all the time. Close your eyes. It's a unique experience. All of a sudden it feels like you're on a hoverboard. You really feel when you lose one of your senses, or when you close your eyes, in that sense, you're feeling your body more. And the balancing poses do become more challenged. A tree is a very simple pose. I actually will be go into tree pose sometimes while I'm teaching. I'm not even thinking about it because I might need to relax. And so I will train my body to do that. And so for me, it's okay. But if I close my eyes, that's a different story.
Oh, yeah. I like what you pointed out earlier about how breathing is both the diagnostic and the medicine. When the child came in that was hyperventilating, you could tell that was the diagnosis of the problem. So emotions are these natural instincts that are going to kick in, trying to tell us about something, but we can take back control from those, take back control of our physical system when we learn to recognize and change the breathing. And that much more so with every muscle in the body. When you're doing yoga poses and stretching, you get in tune with every muscle that's not communicating properly or acting properly.
That's where the mindfulness component comes in, right?
Right, it is. It's where the mindfulness component is. And that was really a phenomenal experience that I had too when I trained with Corey Mascara on the mindfulness-based stress reduction, because I would do part of the coursework was doing an hour of meditation daily. So it really taught me just to sit with my body, sit with my mind, and I was able to get into a truly meditative state where it was thoughts just were not even going through. It's just I was able to just surrender, I guess.
A full hour. Was it like a Vipassana type yoga or mindfulness, or what was?
It was all different. So we did different kinds of meditations throughout the coursework. We did walking meditations. We did ones where we listened. My favorite, which I do in yoga class too, is called a body scan. And that's usually how I'll always start or end my yoga classes with, because it's helping you get in tune with your body. But I like to start my meditation that way and do a body scan, because again, it goes back to that. If you're not focused, like I always think of it, because I am a teacher, if you're not focused because of your emotions, it's hard to focus in on the lesson that I'm teaching. Even in terms of your physical body, if you're hungry, or you got to go to the bathroom, or you got this itch, or whatever it is, you can't still your mind. And mindfulness is really ideally about calming your body and your mind. So that
right. One of our earlier guests on the show, his name is Max Resnick. He's also from New York. He teaches mindfulness to people dealing with chronic hip and back pain. And that's actually how I met him. And I was dealing with chronic hip pain, and I was try anything except for pay attention and be mindful of my pain. And when he finally talked me into doing it, it was really one of the most transforming things, because I was able to learn how to pay attention to and just sit with my pain and not do anything about it, and just recognize it for what it is, and that it comes and it goes. And I guess I wanted to ask, have you ever worked with anybody with chronic pain, teaching them mindfulness? And do you see any benefits there?
I haven't really, no, I have not really bent on that route, although I would like to. My husband and I both, that being that we're both former heart patients, I would like to go that route. But no, I didn't. We did volunteer to teach. We taught or volunteered our time, and I taught a yoga class at a camp with kids with cancer. So we did that. That was based on Long Island. It's called Kids Need More Camp. And they had that. And so I didn't teach mindfulness per se, but I did yoga through in that experience of when I volunteered. But no, not on a regular basis did I teach anyone with chronic pain. I would say it's more emotional things. For example, there was a student of mine whose husband was quite ill, and she went through a rough time in helping him and being the caretaker. And so there are situations like that where I helped people overcome their sorrows. And it's what you mentioned before. It comes back to acceptance, right? So whether it be whatever your situation is, and that's the hardest thing, is to accept it and to know that it will pass. Pain is not, hopefully is not constant. And if you can breathe through it, it's helpful. But no, I have not really taught particularly to that population.
Yeah, just the idea of acceptance is huge. I think that's, you said it too when you were talking about dealing with your cancer diagnosis. And I imagine just the emotional struggle of, oh, I have cancer, or, oh, I've got chronic hip pain, just makes it worse, right? And so, taking yoga's in mindfulness is not really about taking control. It's kind of the opposite, but at the same time, you are taking control of your response to it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's using all different modalities that everything that you have to help you be the best you can be. That's what one of my favorite. She's the owner of the studio. She always ends her classes with that remembering. I can't think of her exact words, but remembering self-care is so important. And that was what I learned when I was doing the social emotional learning training, that you have to take care of yourself. And if you think of it as putting your oxygen mask on before you help a child or another person on the airplane, that's important to do. And I say this because by doing so, it helps you better serve others. And so my goal in life is to help others. And I do take care of myself. And I'm very good at knowing when I need to sleep and when I need to be energized and when I need to step back and take a break. But it is about self-care and about learning to know yourself and about accepting. There's going to be bits and pieces of you that are a challenge, or life happens, and it's just got to roll with it.
It's during that extended uncomfortable pose that you can also face that uncomfortable thought. You're left alone with that idea, and you can deal with it.
Yeah.
You can make peace with it and be done with it. And then you get out of that pose, you've nailed two birds with one stone.
Yeah, my mother used to say, pray on it, Susan. I grew up in a Catholic family household. And so when you had a difficult situation, it was pray on it. I kind of have that, but for me, it's more like yoga. Let's do yoga. So I go to the yoga and I go practice yoga. And before every class, you set an intention. And so your intention might have nothing to do with your body. Yep. It might have like, let me accept the way life is right now. Yep. Or help me get through this, or a prayer, sending out good thoughts to another person that's going through something. So, right.
Because once your mind has been cleared of all the worry and regret about the past or all the worry about the future, you can replace those with thoughts of loving kindness and project that outward towards everybody around you. That's the whole point.
Yeah. In the mindfulness-based stress reduction class, we did something called a compassion meditation, which I use with my students, both my adult and my students in my class, and as well as my yoga students, the children yoga, child yogis. We do something called a compassion meditation. And so compassion meditation is when you send out positive wishes. So if I was doing it with the children, I start off like, let's send positive wishes to to our classmates. Let's send positive wishes out there to and we go to, starts with our classmates, and it goes bigger to our school, to our country, to the world. And then we go back to, let's send a positive wish to, and when we're talking about compassion, to maybe even a person that is a challenge for you, a person who you get along with necessarily. And so that to me has helped me, is like I said, patience on and off the mat. These compassion meditations has also helped me when you're dealing with people that are difficult, difficult to encounter. And unfortunately, not everybody has an outlet, has a positive outlet. And so some people, they just automatically go into that rage mode, like the drivers on the street, right? Sometimes they're just people who they'll honk on their horn the whole way because you weren't fast enough. There's people like that. That's how they go through life, though. And so the compassion meditation, it's not easy to do for that person that is difficult for you. But yeah, it helps you accept people for who they are as well.
That's powerful when you do that. That's going to lift your entire class, school, and town up. So that's an amazing thing.
Yeah, that's the goal.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about the yin yoga workshops that combine the essential oils and singing bowls and all that stuff. Can you describe how that stuff,
I'm curious about
works together?
Yeah, so one of the studios that I practice at, I teach, and I did a series of, they were on the chakras. So the chakras are basically, it's about the energy that goes through you. And so it starts off with the root chakra and being balanced. And so for each of the chakras, I had taught a class. And so I created the poses, and the sequence of poses were all based on, like, for example, the root chakra was all about grounding. And so in addition to that, I used a singing bowl, and I used the red singing bowl, which is, there's a color associated with every chakra. And then the singing bowl has a frequency that matches. I'm not a musician at all. I mean, I have about as much music training as I had phys ed experience. So I didn't really play an instrument in my life either, and nothing to do with my heart, just because it wasn't something that my family really did. But the singing bowl, I love, and I do play them. And I wasn't trained in those yet. I just did that from experience. And so as I did these workshops, I got a bowl for each of the chakras, and then the essential oils also. So essential oils would be like the frankincense, for example, would be a grounding, or something like patchouli or something of that nature, which is grounding. Okay. And then we worked. So every workshop, it was about an hour or so each workshop, I would teach the students about the weaknesses and strengths of if you have that chakra, or you're aligned with that chakra. And and I also became interested. So I told you I had gone to talk to you a little bit more about the chakras. I had gone to what was it called? Summer solstice. I don't forget what they call it, but in New York City, they have this summer solstice at Times Square where they shut everything down. And so I went for one day, and we were there for the weekend. And I remember my friend had taken me and wanted to go into a fortune teller. I did not take that at all. I was like, whatever, we'll do it. So this woman who I just did it for fun, whatever, gave her my $20. And I watched, actually the other girl got it done, and then she paid for me, whatever it was, because she thought it would be fun. So this woman was telling me I didn't have my chakras aligned. I didn't even know what a chakra was, I don't think, at that time. And I'm more of a math science girl, so I don't always embrace all the yogic philosophies. However, it was interesting because she kept pointing to my neck. And she told me my throat chakra was not balanced, and that there was a blockage in my throat. And I think it was a year later, maybe 6 months later, I found out I had thyroid cancer.
Wild.
So I don't really know if this has anything to do with it, or if, that was by chance, but I ended up wanting to learn a little bit more about chakras, because then I was curious. And then because I had that time, since I was out of luck with movement, I learned a little bit about the chakras. So yeah, so that's what I did. I taught these workshops. They're like once a month or so. and I'll play the singing bowl with it. And I have music in the background that relates to the whatever the chakra is.
So it's a multi-sensory experience.
Yes, yes. And then I have the oil. So what I'll do is the students will, because it's a yin, so the students will be holding the pose. And so as they're holding the pose, usually there's some kind of song playing in the background that relates to I'm going to go with the root chakra, which is a grounding chakra. And then I'll go around with essential oils, and I'll give them a little pad of essential oils, different oil if they choose to. And so they'll have that. Each different pose will have a different oil. And at the end, I play with the tune with the singing bowl.
Very cool. And then you also told us before about level 1 Reiki certification. Is that how you say it?
Reiki certification.
Reiki,
yes,
yeah.
I don't have that much experience with Reiki. So I did take level 1, but when my mother was sick, one of my friends had asked me to go to yoga class. And as I told you, I like new challenges. She asked me to go to yoga, though, at a nursing home. I thought, oh God, we're not that old, are we? And as it turns out, it was a beautiful thing because they offered, I think it was called Urban Zen, if I remember correctly. They offered a yoga to the caretakers. And then the public could come as well. But that's why they had it at the nursing home. It wasn't for the patients at that time. It was for caretakers and nurses. And they all opened it up to the public. And so I took a class there. And it was during that class that I experienced Reiki for the first time. It was phenomenal as a student because they would hover their hands over me, not even touching me. And again, I'm more of a math science girl. I need to know, I need to be proven. You need to tell me, and not one way. I'm kind of stubborn that way. I need to know how things work. And so the whole idea of energy flowing, that was kind of weird to me. But it was like my body felt like there was this, they're holding their hands over me, and they talked to me after class, and there's 2 or 3 of the girls, because they take turns going over so that they can give Reiki to each person. And all 3 of them were saying, your energy is phenomenal, the energy that you have. And I've had people tell me that before, even when yoga teachers, they said the energy that you have, when you enter a room, you can feel your energy. And so I didn't really quite know what that meant. And I did take Reiki. I haven't done much with it yet. That's something I want to explore more. But yeah, I have that experience where it is amazing. It's like a transfer of energy. I actually feel almost like a zinging, of energy flowing from my body.
I like how you contrast the scientific, sort of rational, deterministic approach, which is a good approach to understanding. This is how we understand the way the world works around us. But even when you have doubt about something, you hold on to that as a data point and you pay close attention. And if something's working, like the Reiki, like you mentioned, you hold on to that and want to find out more about it. That's a really good approach to learning.
Yeah, I do a meditation with the students. I wouldn't necessarily call it Reiki, but it's somewhat similar to it. So this is with kids yoga. So I do a lot of partner work because which has been great, especially since 2020. The kids need to learn how to interact with one another. And so that has been my mission for the last 4 years, is to try to help them. And so one of the things that I do in partner yoga is they take their hands and they have to mimic each other's hands. So if their hands are like this, they have their hands. We do it 3 ways. So we start off where their hands are next to each other. It is almost it feels like a Reiki. You could feel the energy of a person. But we start easy. We start with the hands together. And so what will happen is you have to be in tune with that person. And so if this is one person and pretend the other hand is another, one person's the leader and the other person will have to follow the motion. It's not that difficult to do when you're touching the hand of that person because you look at them, right? So then the next challenge is to, after you do that, is to hold the hands apart. And you can feel that heat, and you can feel that energy of the person. And then the third challenge is close the eyes. And although it's not Reiki per se, it kind of is, because you feel that heat, you feel that energy exchange, and it helps them to get in tune and to relate to one another.
Have you found that you have the room or freedom to do some of those less traditional elements in your classroom? How have you had to balance that? Do you have room?
I do. I'm fortunate that I do, because we teach social emotional learning, and that is all about learning how to interact with yourself, to interact with others, and understanding what your emotions are, it has given me the freedom to do so. Prior to that, I'd say 10 years ago, maybe not so much. And so that it has opened the doors so that I could really, I could really get into the nitty gritty of helping children become their best self, and recognize that it's okay. It's okay to fail. It's
So
okay to have a bad day.
that's a really good trend that you're describing 10 years ago compared to today. One of
Mhm.
the things that I've been noticing just in the last year or so, and it's kind of one of the reasons Dave and I started a show, we're into history. We obviously don't remember what was taught to us in grade school in history, and then come to find out as an adult, much of it was heavily simplified in order to make it palatable for children, let's just say.
Mhm.
So what's the
Mhm.
whole point of having kids sit down and memorize facts for a test at that age when they don't want to? They need to be learning how to socialize, how to pick up on all the interactive cues, on how to become balanced, grounded people. So then those that are interested as teenagers can become historians and scholars of history, things like that.
Yeah, I think education is starting to change now. And in terms of social studies, it's more about understanding the concepts. So there's less on memorization, and the children's are expected more to understand the concept, to understand the cause and effect relationships, and why things happened. So we're starting to delve into that in terms of social studies, and even in science as well.
That's very encouraging. And even 10 more years, I think we'll be even in an even better place.
Yes.
It is encouraging. I just from my experience as a child, I was one of these kids where they told me I had ADD, but I really didn't. I was just smart and I had a lot of energy, and it was very difficult for me to sit still. And I often got punished for it, and I didn't have a whole outlet for any of it, except for gym class. I'd just be sitting there waiting to go to gym class so I could get it out. But I would have dramatically benefited from learning mindfulness and yoga and breathing and being in awareness as a child. So it's exciting to me when I read your email that you were doing that. Is that a trend going across the nation, that yoga and mindfulness are being taught in schools across the nation, or do you know?
No, I don't necessarily think so, that yoga is being taught across the nation, or necessarily mindfulness. I do think there is more of an openness to thinking outside the box to help children with learning disabilities. For example, what you had mentioned before about ADD, and one of the things that I do, which I learned from I think it was someone from Australia. They in Australia do not have chairs, or was it no, it was New Zealand. They don't have chairs. The person that I have spoken to, they have balls. They have those extra balls. So I have those in my class. And it really helps because when they use those balls, they have to pay attention. If they're not paying attention, they're going to roll off the ball. And there's all these different ways of really helping children. And you mentioned about having excess energy. So if you're in tune with your students, if you can read the room, like I was mentioning,
right,
a good teacher will understand that, and they'll stop the lesson. We do jumping jacks in the middle of our lesson. And I encourage the kids, look, if you need to, if you got a lot of energy, you just go do what you need to do, because you can't sit there. I mean, even as an adult, when I have to take continuing ed classes, sitting there for a whole day, that's torture.
Yeah. In graduate school and during my undergrad, I was good at advocating for myself. So I would just tell the professor, hey, if it's a 2-hour class, I'm probably going to leave every 45 minutes and come back in 5 minutes. Don't worry about it. It's not you, it's me. But as a child, it's hard to communicate that kind of need. And so it's nice that you're able to, like you said, read the room and go, okay, this kid needs to shake it out a little bit. So let's do that.
Yep. Yeah. It is part of the challenge of teaching is to understand what makes a child tick. I told you before, I was certified in elementary ed, and I also have my certification in teaching reading K to 12. And then the third certification that I have is gifted education. And so with the gifted education, that was phenomenal because I was working with students who were like you had mentioned that your teachers judged you in a certain way, but I had kids that had like Asperger's, which is a form of autism, and they were in a gifted class. And they were phenomenal, but yet they couldn't interact with kids. They couldn't look you in the eye. And so you have to learn how to help each and every one so that they understand that it's okay. Like I had started off earlier, back when I was in high school, I learned from the nuns at the academy that everyone has a unique gift to offer. And then going back to my yoga teacher training, it's a matter of finding what's called your dharma. What is your path?
It sounds like you're on your dharma.
Yeah, I think so.
Did you ever have any trouble with conflict or feel like you had to resolve differences between those Eastern and Western philosophies? You grew up in Catholic Church. You're obviously well versed in the tenets of the Christian faith. Has that had anything to do with your journey learning Eastern practices?
Not really, because I am open-minded. So I don't necessarily embrace all of what the Catholic Church has taught me, even though I did go to Catholic school for 12 years. And I also don't embrace all the Yoga Sutras either. And so I kind of find a common ground, a middle ground. And that is how I experience life as well. Like I'll take a little bit of this and a little bit of that and make it my own.
And you pay attention to what works and what works for other people around you. And instead of trying to be technically correct about the details, you just do what works and share that with other people. I think it's a great approach.
Yeah, that's my goal.
Is there any, where do you see this practice in, 10 years or in the future, just generally speaking? Like, where would you like to take your journey?
My journey? Well, I am approaching the end of my education career and in terms of formal elementary ed. And so I hope to take this journey into all different destinations. That's my next journey. And I would like to get my 500 hour, which is the highest level that you can get. I haven't pursued that yet, but that would be my goal. And I'd like to continue that Reiki training. And I had mentioned that my husband and I had volunteered at yoga. Not yoga, at the Kids Need More camp, which is a camp with kids with cancer. I did that it started out as part of my yoga teacher training. I needed to do like goodwill for others, shall we say. And so I started that and I realized, wow, giving back, it really gave me, it gave me more, I think, than I gave them. And so I guess where do I see myself, that next stage of my life would be to give back. I have been blessed in my life with many things. And although I've had some challenges and had a few bumps in the road with my health and continue to have that, I still have many blessings. And so I'm hoping that in the next 10 years, I can share that. I can go to different destinations and I can give back to others, whether it be that I go to camps like I did. When I was a kid, I didn't mention this, but in my youth, I participated. My parents sent me to a camp. It was a camp for kids who had open heart surgery. And it was amazing because it really helped me be okay with where I was at and not to feel alone. And so I've learned that when you're in those kinds of situations, when you're feeling alone, right? When you're feeling alone because you feel like you're the only one, that when you have a support group, it could help you. And so I somehow want to give back in yoga in those kind of ways, whether I go to hospitals and help people who are recovering, or I go to camps like the open heart camp, if that still exists. I haven't looked that up. That was in Great Barrington, Massachusetts. And so I'm not sure, but that's what I hope. I hope I can give back, and I hope I can help people see the world through a different lens, because I'm fortunate that my lens has rosy colored glasses. And even in the gray skies, I've learned to dance in the rain.
I like it. I think that's a good line to end the interview on. What do you think, Mike?
Yeah, this has been great. It was great to meet you, Susan. Thanks for answering our questions.
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah, we really appreciate you coming on the show, and thanks for joining the multiverse.
All right. Take
Yeah.
care. You have a good weekend.
All right. Yeah.
All right.
you
Take
too.
care.